Dr. Bert Caldwell examines a recent study showing that gastric pH directly affects the dissolution of T4. The authors draw very interesting conclusions regarding Tirosint, a new liquid gel cap formulation from Acromax Pharmaceuticals.
As we know, T4 has a narrow therapeutic index, and even small variations in the available amount of active drug can affect efficacy and safety. So it has been a consistent balancing act for us to achieve and maintain correct therapeutic levels. Consider also that, as I mentioned in the previous presentation, there's always been drug-to-drug and dose-to-dose variability in T4 tablets. A recent in vitro study published in the European Journal of Pharmaceutics and Biopharmaceutics now brings an additional variable into focus: gastric pH and its effect on dissolution. But before I get into the data, let me provide a bit of background to put things into perspective. Studies have demonstrated significant malabsorption of T4 in patients with altered gastric acidity due to H. pylori infection, chronic gastritis, and in those undergoing treatment with proton pump inhibitors. In one study, published in the prestigious New England Journal of Medicine, the daily required dose of T4 was 22 to 34% higher in patients with H. pylori-related gastritis, atrophic gastritis, or both conditions when compared to the reference group of patients who had no gastric disorders. This finding is supported by a retrospective study of 391 patients with hypothyroidism. This was published in 2008 and concluded that patients who are PCA positive for autoimmune gastritis required significantly more LT4 treatment every day than the PCA negative patients. The PPI effect was demonstrated in a retrospective analysis of patients with hypothyroidism who also received the proton pump inhibitor lansoprazole. These patients required a statistically significant mean dose increase of 29% to maintain pretreatment levels of thyroid-stimulating hormone. Changes in dose for a control group were not statistically significant. The authors of the recent in vitro study cite dissolution of a drug as critical to oral absorption and bioavailability. Intuitively, one would expect a liquid T4 preparation to dissolve rapidly and consistently, and for its absorption to be predictable. This study goes a long way towards confirming this expectation. Before getting into the data, it should be noted that this was an in vitro study, and in vitro data do not necessarily correlate with clinical outcomes. The study itself, by Pablo and colleagues, examined the dissolution profile of Tirosint. Evaluations were conducted using a single 150 microgram tablet per dissolution bath, and Tirosint concentrations were analyzed using a highly sensitive assay. As we can see here, Tirosint showed a consistent dissolution pattern over the entire pH range after 60 and 120 minutes, with close to 100% of the drug being dissolved. A clinical study will be needed and is in development to confirm the conclusions reached here. Tirosint delivers rapid, consistent dissolution regardless of gastric pH. These findings could be meaningful because pH in patients can vary widely due to gastric disease, food, and PPI therapy. So as you can see from this case study, there is a need for highly consistent delivery of T4 therapy. Tirosint, in a liquid gel cap that is free from all additives such as gluten, lactose, and sucrose, provides physicians and their patients with a pure formulation of T4 therapy, ensuring consistent dissolution regardless of gastric pH.